Hello and welcome to the Green Machine, a special edition of the Green Machine. We've done an Alan Hunter here, guys. We have called a referendum. Well, not quite, but we've called an emergency podcast. And David, your host, joined by Nick. No, Martin, he's off missing somewhere. So just first of all, I want to apologise. The sound quality might not be the very best, but as we have said, it is an emergency podcast. We are here, Nick, to talk about Lee Carsley, possibly having conversations about taking over from Stephen Kenny. This was we're just going to get into it, really. I mean, you shared a tweet. I shared one of your posts that you got from the Telegraph. Here is the comment from the Telegraph here. Indeed, the suggestions is that he is very much likely to be long-term successor, Lee Carsley, for the Football Association of Ireland if it does not push on with Stephen Kenny beyond Euro 2024. So you shared that post on Twitter and on Facebook. I reshared it because I'm lazy. We've had a lot of feedback. We're going to get through some of those comments there. But what is your take, really? I mean, we called it, didn't we, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago?
Before we do, I have to give a shout out to Irish Football Blog because they did discuss it. But we did our last, not our last, our Boys in Green from Monday, but the previous one from the 22nd of November. I think we discussed. We were basically talking about the Stephen Kenny situation. I mean, look, 3 bad international windows in a row. We just threw out the question casually. We didn't say that we wanted him sacked or anything like that. We just threw out the question saying who will come in. And I believe it was me that said Lee Carsley. And what I said, I mean, my argument at the time was, I said, look, he's a good package for it. The way I was looking at it was Gareth Southgate went from England under-21 to England manager. And look, there's a lot of criticisms of Southgate this week, isn't there, because of his conservative style and so on. But it showed that within the FA system, which is one of the best football organizations in the world, which it is, in terms of their production line, in terms of their recruitment system, the people that they hire are the best of the best. And Lee Carsley did have a lot of credentials at development level before taking that England under-21 job. He was with the England under-20s. He was in the Manchester City Academy. He was with Brentford. He was with Coventry, who all have very, very successful youth systems. And he was part of that. And he was considered good enough for it. And I suppose my argument back in November was that I didn't say Stephen Kenny should go. I didn't say that. But what I did say is Lee Carsley should come in because of that similarity with Southgate, that he made that progression. The fact he played for Ireland, the fact he's an ex-international player, I think it's not an essential. I mean, wasn't there a bit of trouble about, was it Jamie Carragher saying it had to be an Englishman in charge of England?
Yeah,
but
nonsense.
I think that is good. I think he is familiar with the setup of Irish football, and I think because he's so highly rated, because before he was even with the FA and before he was even with Man City, what a lot of people don't know about Lee Carsley, he has a Championship Manager of the Month award from when he was with Brentford. He was caretaker manager. He won 4 out of 5 games, I think, with them. The funny thing with this, Dave, and the funny thing with this whole story, it's a massive escalation. I mean, we're covering it. Look, we won't lie. Look, we've a little bit of spare time today. We wanted to get a couple of recordings out before the end of the week, but it's very, very topical and has exploded. So, I think as an Irish football fan podcast, it is part of our responsibility to kind of cover that and to give people our take on it and to bring some of the fan take. So, look, we're probably part of this escalation, but I think it is something that we'd like to cover because it's interesting. But I think like the thing with it is, I mean, I had the writer. Oh, geez, it's going to come to me in a second. But the whole thing was, it was a quote, and you've read that out, David. It was a quote saying that he's been considered by the FAI, and that hasn't come from any Irish sources. It came from Sam Wallace in the Telegraph, who was a very, very in the loop and respected writer, and that's why it has escalated. Because you could see that if you saw that in the Sun saying, "Oh, the FAI are eyeing up Lee Carsley," you wouldn't think anything of it. You'd just be like, yeah, well, it makes sense. And Stephen Kenny's under a bit of pressure. But the fact is, Sam Wallace, who's a very, very well respected and informed writer, is I suppose causing a lot of media outlets to jump on this. And I don't think Stephen Kenny's job is under immediate threat. But because this has been mentioned as I said, by a respected writer, people are jumping on it and people are questioning it. And I think the FAI would be very silly not to have a contingency plan in place. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was Lee Carsley.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it obviously after the last window in November. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there going, oh, well, you're changing the tune here a bit. I just want to prefix what I'm about to say on the whole matter. I, like yourself, like the podcast, the page, Lansing Road, and the Green Machine, massive, massive fans of Stephen Kenny, massive supporters of Stephen Kenny and the Iron Manager, what he was trying to do, his backroom staff were trying to do, and the project. But I think it's fair to say that we've seen the progression. We saw a progression in the qualifying campaign, the World Cup qualifying campaign towards the end, which, I was kind of saying from, day one, this is what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a bit of pain, but I think as long as we finish strongly, grand. Nations League, then there was a bit of confidence going into that. Wasn't the best of starts through very unusual team selections. And now we had an okay end to that, although Armenia was a bit of a, not a disaster, but it was a bit of a wobble. And then we just had a really, really poor final international window. And for me, I think it's just a case of I will continue to support the manager as long as it makes sense and I can see what he's trying to do. And I've always seen what he's trying to do, although there have been a few irregularities, in my opinion, of what he should be doing. Yeah. And one of them, of course, the major one for me was the November window. Why he didn't bring a younger squad with players. I think he would have got better performances out of those, because put those guys in the shop windows. Don't put the guys that are on holiday, that don't want to get injured for the the Christmas run in, that kind of stuff. But he went with that, and he had two poor performances, really, really bad performances. And now all of a sudden he's put himself under undue pressure. There's also other issues with Stephen Kenny. He's not learning. We always say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, when it's glaringly broken and it needs to be fixed at half time, he waits till the 76th, 80th minute, maybe 65 minutes in, and he's just not learning. And I think there's a few people probably within the FAI that are probably looking at that going, we like what you're trying to do. We like the project. And look, I still support the manager, but, he hasn't helped himself. And I am second guessing the manager with a lot of this stuff here now. And, and we kind of said this from the beginning. Like, there was people out there, Nick, and you know yourself, that were like straight away, League of Ireland manager. No. Hysteria. Absolutely hysterical, twisting their knickers. Just no matter what he did, they just did not want to see this guy. But he has to be given, I was talking to a friend yesterday who was anti-Kenny.
Didn't know your friends.
He could see what was happening. He was pro-Kenny. Then he was like, not too sure. And then there's always, I said friend. Oh, okay. One friend. But then it's like, Lee Carsley's on the horizon. I want Kenny out right now. You're like, hold on. Like, let's not get our knickers in a twist here.
There's no evidence here.
Manager.
Yeah, there's no evidence here with Kenny, or with Carsley rather. And as I said, this is a bit of euphoria, which we're kind of steering the pot with as well. As I said, like, we're not helping this. I mean, it's something that's been escalated. And the only weight that's been held is the fact that it's Sam Wallace who is informed. But the other thing that, like, with Stephen Kenny, I mean, the job he's done, there's a couple of really subtle things that he's done that other managers wouldn't, and we have to respect that. He's brought in young lads. He's brought in the likes of Troy Parrott, Adam Ida, Nathan Collins, Andrew Bamadele, Jason Malumbi, all these young lads who probably wouldn't have been blooded under a more experienced
the plan
manager.
Is solid. It's a solid plan, though, isn't it?
It's like the kind of the structural and the systematic stuff, like the subtle things that had to come in, the developmental things that had to come in, came in. But now it's at the stage where he's brought in the young lads. He's changed the style of play. He's changed the formation. He's established a bit of a culture. But now the results aren't going his way, and we're not actually seeing anything beyond that. Like, I mean, we were celebrating wins against Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. Teams. I know people are saying, "Oh, we're at their level now," but we're really not. We're really not. Like, I mean, Qatar beat both of those teams, and look how bad Qatar were at the World Cup. But with Carsley, as I said, there's no evidence. There is zero evidence. And what we have to consider with Lee Carsley as well, like, what are his credentials apart from kind of developmental roles? Because, as I said, he was a caretaker manager. Like, even just go through his CV. So if you think of Stephen Kenny's managing since his mid to late 20s or whatever. Like, he was with Bowes, He was with Rovers, he was with Derry, he's some great successes there. He's with started off at Longford, didn't he? And then went over to Dunfermline. Again, he was a very young man when he did that. It didn't quite work out. And then he had some unbelievable success with Dundalk. Like, he has European football experience where Lee Carsley doesn't. So that's what people need to keep in mind when we're, because we have to be a bit diplomatic with this. It's not even anything concrete, but it's just something that if this does become a scenario in whatever 6 months' time, a year down the line, this is the things that people do need to consider. And with Carsley, sorry, Dave.
Do you not think it's a bit of a kite though, that maybe somebody's flying? Because look, we know the FAI is as leaky as a sieve. They leak information constantly. It's what makes it so fascinating. But do you not think it could be a bit of a kite? How did the public feel about that?
Well, my understanding, I'm gonna go through Carsley's CV in a minute, but my understanding of it was that years ago Lee Carsley offered his services to the FAI. That's been well documented, and I wouldn't say that they said no, we don't need you, but there was no position basically. And then subsequently, after that, he got into his different developmental roles with Brentford, and then he was with City. I think he was with Birmingham for a while as well. And then now, I can't remember I should have had the source because it adds so much more weight to it. But just before Anthony Barry was appointed, I'm pretty sure that the FAI had approached Lee Carsley, and Stephen Kenny had approached Lee Carsley to assist him after Damien Duff had left. And Carsley turned it down because I don't think it was the right role for him, and I don't think he was willing to step away from the FA at that time. That's what I believe anyway. Again, if I can find the source, I will. I just can't find it right now on the spot. But I'm pretty sure that he was I'm pretty sure he was approached to. It's somewhere in a paper, and I don't know how concrete it is, but I'm pretty sure he was approached to replace Damien Duff, and subsequently Anthony Barry was. But I think with I think with it all, when it all comes down to it, like, we mentioned why he would be why he will be a decent appointment. As we said, it's similar to Gareth Southgate, where he's in the best system in the world. It is. They're not winning the World Cup, but look at how many underage World Cups they've won, and look at their facilities. They're the best in the world, and people won't like to hear that, but they are the best in the world in terms of international football and development, underage. Just another thing that's really important. He will be affordable. He's not a Premier League manager. He's not a manager with loads of club experience, so he will be affordable. And what don't the FAI have at the moment? Money.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, obviously, I'd imagine there's some sort of compensation package which we're completely unaware of with, Stephen Kenny, if they were to release him early from his contract, if the qualifiers go particularly south. For me, with Willie Carsley, I wouldn't have an issue with him. Obviously, as long as it's done right. Ideally, you'd want a situation for me personally where, well, first of all, you want Stephen Kenny to succeed. Like, you would really, really want that.
In an ideal world, it would be so much smoother if the qualification campaign went well and Stephen Kenny was still in charge.
Exactly. That's the first thing I'd want. But if it doesn't, you'd want maybe a situation where you can sort of get Stephen Kenny to step up, take a seat in the boardroom, as they would say back in the day, have his involvement, because you don't want another situation. I can't see how it'll be avoided, but you don't want another situation like Brian Kerr, where you got somebody who could be so important to the development of football in Ireland, sort of lost for all those years in the wilderness. You don't want that. I would love to have Stephen Kenny in the tent somewhere. Yeah. But my other concern with Lee Carsley would be, you say he doesn't have European experience, but he's still managing at an international level. So yes, he wouldn't have a great idea of the top level, but he still knows how international football works, albeit at a younger level. But
even managing during international windows, and we spoke about this back in November, didn't we? We said a big advantage. Well, not a big advantage, a bit of an advantage. Look, it's not essential. It wouldn't be essential, but working with players in an international window is a skill in itself, isn't it? And like Martin O'Neill did say, that's something he struggled with. And Roy Keane as well. He said it was something that he struggled with, that you've only got the players for whatever, 10 days or a week, where, look, I'm not saying it's a massive thing. I think any good manager worth their salt can, plan sessions and get a lot into that week. But the fact that he's doing that with the England under 21s, just to go through his CV as well. I mean, look, he was with Coventry. He was with the underage teams, and he was caretaker there. He's with the Brentford development squad, which of course is a very revolutionary squad, isn't it? Just in terms of how they run things. Then he was Brentford caretaker. He was with the Man City Academy. He's with the Birmingham Academy. Then he was caretaker with them. And then since 2020, he's been with the England under 20s and was promoted to 21 manager in 2021. So look, it's that's what we have to realize. He doesn't have as much senior experience as Stephen Kenny. Is it in a better quality system? Is it in better quality leagues? Absolutely. But, you know, Stephen Kenny had well over 20 years experience before he took the Ireland job, where Lee Carsley, I mean, he's really only got several games of first team or senior experience. I mean, look, as I said, Gareth Southgate managed Middlesbrough beforehand, didn't he? He managed Middlesbrough before he managed the England under-21s. But, you know, I think
Yeah,
I think it's a good fit, but I think we also have to look at how inexperienced he is as well.
yeah. I mean, as the point I was trying to make earlier was that, you know, that doesn't bother me. You know, that he hasn't managed the Premier League club or whatever, but he's involved in a coaching structure, one of the best in the world, and it is an international coaching structure, and there's a fervour there to develop younger players, bring players in. So I think he's a perfect fit. My biggest concern would be if he makes a really damn good job of it. You know, we could have a bit of a Mark Hughes situation going on here where, you know, oh, you're doing really well. Here's a championship job. And then you start to hear the whole, well, you know, I missed it the day in, day out. And before you know it, like we've lost this guy and we're a victim of our own success. It happened with Anthony Barry, didn't it? So
Yeah.
that's one concern I would have because, you know, Lee Carsley is a former Irish international, but let's be honest, he wasn't treated very well. You know,
No,
he's
he
not like
wasn't. No,
Gary Green.
under Trapattoni as well. Because I know he was a bit older, but wasn't Glenn Whelan getting in ahead of him when he was playing quite well for Birmingham? But like the other thing is,
Yeah.
like in an ideal world, and it wasn't going to happen. Look, it was financial reasons and it was also practical reasons. But ideally, you would have had Lee Carsley come in when Damien Duff had left, and he apparently he's turned this down. You know, again, I don't know where the source is, but I'm about 90% sure that was documented that he did turn it down. And let's say if it didn't work out with Stephen Kenny, let's say the qualification campaign goes really, really badly, Carsley probably would have stepped up. He would have had an experience of being around those players. He would have had an experience working with the FAI, and it might have been a natural progression. You know, but again, like Dave, the more I speak about this, I'm kind of like, there's nothing in this. You know, there's nothing in this, but it is something worth looking at. I mean, realistically, I can't remember. I saw something recently, and I can't remember what it was, and it was someone saying, kind of anonymously saying, "Oh, it's the next Ireland manager is going to be Chris Hughton." But you know, when you break it down to the bare bones,
God,
as I said, practically and financially, like Carsley does make sense. But look, we could get to March. We could draw with France. They'll probably have a new manager in place. Who knows? We'll beat Latvia, who we will anyway. But then all of a sudden you've got a draw and a win. It doesn't matter against who, but you'll have a draw and a win. He'll be unbeaten in March. You never know. And then you're going in to the rest of the games. He could have a very, very successful summer. So, you know, we're speaking very, very prematurely. He's had 3 bad windows, but I don't think it's enough to sack him. And you can see that there's evidential concerns. And this is what we spoke about in November, isn't it? But there's still nothing in it.
It's not the results. It's not the results, though, Nick. It's the manner. It's picking these players. It's sort of saying, now, did he pick that squad which, you know, I'd written about it. People were saying, just pick a young team, bring young players.
Yeah.
We know the style of football. We know when we play the right, you know, the 3 lads in midfield. I've thought, Jesus, till I'm blue in the face about it. The 3 lads in midfield, Cullen, Malumbi and Knight. You play those 3 lads, you need cover for that. That works, okay? That works. We can play anyone with that system, I believe, anyway. But instead of strengthening his pool, he just went with the same old players that let him down time and time again. And guess what? They let him down again.
It was a waste.
November.
It was a waste.
I think that's what. Yeah, that's what's annoyed people. It's like, I don't understand. Look, you know, when you saw Mick learning on the job, you go, yeah, I can see what he's trying to do there. And you can see that with Stephen Kenny. Yes, I see what he's trying to do there. So we'll give him time. But now you're like, I don't see what you're trying to do. And I don't know if it's pressure from the FAI, like, you better get 2 good results here. You know, maybe he's hearing things.
Dave, I think it's pressure from himself, because if you look at Packy Bonner, who's been in loads of developmental roles, and he's back with the FAI, you can guarantee that the likes of Packy Bonner would have wanted Stephen Kenny to stretch out his player pool. I mean, there was something about Jack McGlynn. We've covered Jack McGlynn. He plays for Philadelphia Union over in the US. Really, really technically good player. There's been a lot of interest from European clubs in him. If you look up any highlight reels of him, or if you look up any, you can get like the MLS games on repeat and stuff. He is a phenomenal player. And I mean, I think the MLS is one of the top represented leagues out of all of the World Cup. So it just shows that they're coming on leaps and bounds. And there was a couple of comments from the FAI basically saying that, Keith Andrews went over to scout him and didn't even have a conversation with the guy. So literally Keith Andrews went over on FAI wages on holidays to the States and didn't reach out to this guy, Jack McGlynn. They're basically holding out and they're not pursuing him. If you look at Morocco, who after getting to the semi-finals of the World Cup, I'm not saying this is the right thing, but like half their team is Spanish, half their team is Dutch, half their team is French. But these players were pursued by the Moroccan FA. I know they have a bit of funding behind them, don't they? One of the kings, or we were talking about it the last day. But I mean, the way to look at it is that's not really good enough. It's not a good enough approach. It's not that we're begging lads. We're trying to stretch out our player pool. If we had a massive player pool, you wouldn't need to be begging players. But when you have a limited player pool, and when we've shown that when our player pool is stretched, we really don't have much depth. Sometimes you need to be aggressively pursuing these lads. And there's been no, by the looks of it, Keith Andrews.
Yeah, of course. Jack did it.
By the sounds of it, Keith Andrews went on holidays to Philadelphia rather than do any proper work, took in a match. Where Stephen Kenny hasn't got that inclination to do it. I'm not, and I said, I don't think it's right we beg lads, but I think it is right that we maximize our player pool and we get as big a player pool as possible. Where if you were to look at someone like Lee Carsley, he's in an association that in the last 10 years has been tasked with trying to stem the flow of English-born players playing for other countries, because Wilfred Zaha, Victor Moses, those kind of lads went off and played for other countries. And since Lee Carsley has been involved with the FA, and he had nothing to do with this, by the way, because there was a lot of rumours that he did, Jack Grealish and Declan Rice went from Ireland back to England. So I'm not saying he had anything to do with it, but he's coming from an association that has experience in securing players to play for the national team who have other options if they want. So he'd be a very, very, he'd be a little bit more aggressive than Kenny, I think. I think he'd be a little bit more open-minded than Kenny in terms of stretching the player pool. He'd be a bit more resourceful. And as I said, like, people will give in. They say, oh, we only want Irish lads playing for us. But look at Morocco. They're not complaining.
Yeah, it just seems to be a bit strange because, I know with obviously Jack did really well. He had had the granny really turn it up to 29. What is it? Brian Kerr was he was a bit like that as well, wasn't he? Where he just didn't really want to go with English-born players. He mostly, it just seems to be this kind of Irish managerial thing. No, we'll do it ourselves. Now, look, to be fair to Stephen Kenny, he did get Sammy Smolix on board and Josh Harness, not Josh Harness,
Marcus Harness. Oh, sure,
what's his name? Harness.
Marcus Harness. Yeah, he hasn't really played.
Yeah,
Look, but there's lads who are reaching out and there's lads who be made aware by the FAI. But if you look at Jack. Jack went for lads. Jack was nearly camping out in their front door. Mick McCarthy had that kind of link because he was of Irish descent and he could connect that way. Carsley will be similar. And as I said, it's not about begging lads. It's basically about, making them feel wanted. Where Kenny's kind of saying, look, we'll see what they think. They're footballers. They're not soldiers. People seem to think they're soldiers and they want to fight for their country. They're not. They're footballers. They're in a business. They're going to want the sales pitch. They are going to want the sales pitch. I honestly think in a few years' time, we are going to have a number of lads who are eligible for the likes of Nigeria. We have a trio of Albanian eligible players, Rocco Vada, Kevin Zeffe, and Alton Faraj, which I never know Zeffe and Faraj. I never know how to pronounce his name, but with Rovers, you have those three. Albania are going to be pursuing them. And although they love Ireland and they're very much Irish, their agents and their families are going to say, well, what is the most financially sound package? And if the FAI aren't aggressively pursuing them, and Zeffi doesn't seem to get in some of the certain lineups, they're going to start asking questions. So it's not even about begging people or anything like that. It's about enticing them and making them feel wanted. Did Declan Rice feel wanted?
Well, the Welsh
I actually don't think so. Did Jack Grealish feel wanted? No, King didn't start him half the time. So yes, they might have always been on England's radar, absolutely, but it's not like the FAI were putting a lot of love into securing them.
I think as well, with I was watching a thing there with David Conley on Off the Ball where he was saying that the Welsh FA are approaching kids age 12.
12, yeah.
And people like that, from England, Scotland, all over England, do you have Welsh grandparents? Lovely, come on board, we just look, at the moment, ideally, we'd love to have a situation where we have players with a conveyor belt. But in order to do that, you need to have a really good League of Ireland. We don't. It's going in the right direction, but probably not going. The trajectory probably isn't steep enough, quite frankly. But it is going in the right direction. But yeah, we definitely need to be stretching out the pool. That's what um, Stephen Kenny should have done in November. He didn't. And I think that's what's got up a lot of people's noses, including herself. I wrote an article about that. I was actually standing in Malta Airport, Valletta Airport. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't understand it. Why didn't he bring a young team with him? Like, give him a go. Give that guy in America a go. Listen, you're going to start against Malta. We might bring on as a sub against Norway. And listen, if we lose both games, no one cares because I see what you're trying to do there, Stephen. I see what you're trying to do. And that's the problem with Stephen Kenny at the moment, Nick, that he's doing things that people cannot understand what he's doing. And I think he's kind of lost it a little bit.
And the biggest shame about that, Dave, is look, the first couple of months, they were riddled with COVID. They were like Matt Doherty was playing centre half.
Yeah.
They were absolutely.
You could explain it.
You could explain it.
You could explain that.
And there were certain things like, I mean, before the Serbia game, he switched formation, didn't he? And we hadn't scored it. Do you remember we hadn't scored a goal in I don't know how long? And his response was to put 2 up top. We scored 2 goals. And then when we played Ukraine at home and the 2-man midfield got absolutely overrun, what does he do? He puts 3 men into midfield and he combats that. So there's some things he's learning from. But as I said, we've come through 3 really, really bad windows and a lot of the same mistakes are being made. And it's kind of like he's running out of ideas. I do think we've a limited player pool. I don't think we've limited players. But I think like even if Josh Cullen's injured, we've no holding midfielder. I think we're so like in certain positions.
And that's why November was so important.
Yeah. But so I think a lot of it isn't entirely his fault, but there's a lot of things.
That's why November was so important.
Yeah, exactly. But things that are in his control, like November, he's let himself down a bit. So look, as I said, and the whole thing, Dave, people are probably listening to this, and if they're still listening, they're probably like, why the fuck are you doing an episode that's based off pure speculation? And I think it's because it could swiftly become a big reality. And and on top of that, we have a duty to discuss topics, but it is something just to think about.
Of course we do. I think if we were to do a series, like if Stephen Kenny's reign does come to an end, right? Listen, I said we don't want that. We want him to succeed, right? We've supported him, and we will continue to support him, right, until the very end. However, you got to support it when it makes sense. And I think the way it's going, if you look at November, I think that is going to be the key. Not the start, as you said, the COVID. Look, that can all be explained. The COVID, the false positives. It was all a complete cluster. Like losing all his players to all this, that, and the other. Right? He didn't lose it. McCarthy, a couple of things I want to clear up here. Mick McCarthy didn't get us to a semi-final playoff spot. Okay, that was actually Martin O'Neill and results. Yeah. So he didn't, people say, oh, you blew that. No, look, come on, that was his 3rd game in charge or whatever, okay? So you could explain all of that. You can see what he was trying to do. But as I said, that November, I think that is going to be absolutely key. And something else I just want to say, and we'll get to the comments in a second, but these people calling for Chris Hughton to take over as Ireland manager, would you ever... Jesus Christ.
Clueless, clueless. Yeah, it's just assumptions.
But come on.
A great lad, look, could be good to have involved in some kind of capacity, but not as manager.
God, no. I mean, Jesus. I mean, those times are gone, right? What I will say is that if it doesn't work out with Stephen Kenny, put Lee Carsley in. I am encouraged by the fact that the FAI, if that is what the FAI are going to do, I'm encouraged by the fact that they believe in the project. The project is sound. It's just the execution has wavered over the last couple of months, in my opinion. But the project, absolutely, the plan is 100% sound. We don't want managers, right? We don't want any of that nonsense because you know what's going to happen with Chris Hughton, like he did with all his other clubs. Yeah, he did a job, okay, but he's just going to play 10 men behind the ball or 11 men behind the ball. That's all he's going to do. And it's going to be rubbish. You're going to have half-empty Lansing Rows, and it's going to be the same crap again. So, just no, absolutely not. Great guy, lovely, lovely fella. Chris Hughton, Irish legend, trailblazer, you name it. Lovely guy, but not as Ireland manager. Nick, let's have a look at some of the comments here that were on the Lansing Road page here. So I just basically shared your post on the Green Machine. So mostly in favour. So we have Thomas Coughlin saying, oh, when? Is 24 hours long enough? So he wants Lee Carsley in. Kevin Christie has a strong coaching pedigree and international experience from his playing days. Best option available to us, I think, and could further develop what Kenny has started, rather than wiping the slate clean and reverting back to industrial Route 1 football, as some of our more impatient and reactionary fans would like.
Yeah.
Kevin Christie is a man after our own hearts there. David Nolan, question. How many household managerial names can you bat off from teams competing in Qatar?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then actually, Gareth Sweeney actually responds and goes, Lionel Scaloni, Luis Enrique, Jose Flick, Roberto Martinez, Carlos Queiroz, Hector Cooper, Louis Van Gaal, Gareth Southgate, Didier Deschamps are all well known. Well in, Gareth Sweeney. And it's all basically just yes, highly thought of in England, and he might get us a couple of players to declare for us from John O'Mahony. We have national manager, show some respect for Michael Drew, fair enough. Morish Mossy Tonkivar, I butchered that name, I do apologise, Morris. Eden first, then Carsley. And Eddie, it's just one wants Johnny Logan in. There you go. Another one, solid as a rock, great vision, definitely yes for me. Done a great job coaching at Brentford. It's actually, I can't really see any negative comments about it, Nick. I'm just going through it. Just get him now. You'll have to change his top.
There's a really, really good. There's an excellent point, and I'm going to pull it up here in a second. From Phelan Warren on Twitter. So I'm going to pull it up in a second, and it's a really, really excellent point. It's kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit here. If you just bear with me for 20 seconds or so. No, I'm going to get it here. Oh yeah, he just says, I reckon, this is from Phelan Warren on Twitter. I reckon, regardless of one's opinion of Kenny, we should allow him to focus on a bloody tough qualification campaign and speculate about Carsley when and only when there is a vacancy in the job. This helps nobody. I mean, look, we're simply relaying the information. He probably feels that this episode isn't helping anyone, but it is a good point. And I think it's really, really key to point out that this quote from Sam Wallace was saying that he was the long-term successor, not the short-term successor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want Kenny to succeed. We all want Kenny to succeed, but you cannot support something that doesn't make sense anymore, and look, listen, it's a fascinating conversation, and we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for listening. Please give us a 5-star review, please. I know our sound quality wasn't great today, but unfortunately, I'm in a bunker and Nick's hiding under his duvet somewhere. So it's an emergency podcast. But do give us a follow on the Lansdowne Road Facebook page, also the Green Machine Facebook page. We have some exciting news coming up about our YouTube channel, Nick. Oh yes, we're going to start. I don't want to spoil a surprise anyway. But listen, thank you very much. This podcast will be available and all our other episodes on greenmachinepodcast.com. The Green Machine Podcast.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and as I said before, the Facebook page. Anyway, Nick, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for joining us, and thank you at home for listening. Good night, and God bless. I was channeling my inner
Jesus
Bill O'Herlihy there.
Yeah.